Srimad Bhagavatam 1:12-29. So, in chapter 12, uh, we have seen how the Brahmanas who came to attend the Jataka ceremony, the birth ceremony, they were uh, making predictions about his future. In the previous verses, a lot of predictions were made by the Brahmanas to the point where he cursed by the son of Ravana and that he will die in 7 days uh, due to a snake bite. And uh, it was also predicted that uh, the entire life of man had been predicted by the Brahmanas during his birth ceremony itself. And in this verse, it is described that the Brahmanas were living after uh, after completing the birth ceremony. सर्वे प्रतीजाग्मु स्वकान् गृहान् इति राज्ञा उपादिश्य विप्रजातककोविदः लब्धापचितायः सर्वे प्रतिजाग्मु स्वकान् गृहान् इति राज्ञा उपादिश्य विप्रजातककोविदः लब्धापचितायः सर्वे प्रतिजाग्मु स्वकान् गृहान्. Means he thus Rajne unto the king Upadishya, having advised Vipraha, persons well versed in the Vedas, Jataka Kovidaha, persons expert in astrology and in the performance of birth ceremonies, Labda Apchitaya, those who had received sumptuously as remuneration, went back Swakan their own Grihan. Translation: thus those who are expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed king both, and after that they left uh, to their homes. Are the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. But such knowledge aims at perfection of self-realization. The word Veda itself refers to knowledge, means it is not uh, it is not to be understood that Vedas are merely focused on religious knowledge or the study of religious scriptures, because when the Veda knowledge, British economic historian, so it was estimated that during that time when the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse of knowledge, so during that time Bharat was the most prosperous country in the world. It had largest share GDP for thousands of years. So that was the time when the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse. But of course, the Bhartiyas were never uh, they never misused their knowledge to attack others or to loot uh, only certain the empire uh, on which the sun never sets. But today, uh, ironically, in that same country is witnessing destruction. So, as they say, in which prosper world economically, and that was the time when the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse of knowledge. But after this so-called modern education science were brought by the looters who claim that they made new discoveries. So after that era, Bharat was reduced to one of the poorest countries in the world. So since the ancient times, the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse of knowledge. The entire epistemology of knowledge was covered by the Vedas, and it also covered the material and spiritual aspects. One who was supposed to have been in the Vedas was someone who knew both the material and spiritual aspects of knowledge. So ultimately, as mentioned here, such knowledge aims at perfection of self-realization. Which material knowledge a person has, it should culminate in uh, understanding spiritual knowledge as well, to the point where it enables the individual to attain perfection of self-realization. In other words, the Vedas are the guide for the civilized man in every respect. Since human life is the opportunity from all material miseries, it is probably guided by the knowledge of the Vedas in the matters of both. So, out of the 84 lakh species of material bodies, the human beings are the only ones in this material universe who have been blessed with the ability to engage in spiritual inquiry, and ultimately, when the spiritual inquiry culminates in devotional service, then every human being self realization. So, to know the self is to know our true identity, meaning that we can only realize the self when we understand that we are not this body, we are not this material body, but spirit soul. And it should be regarded as the first step towards self realization, and that should culminate in in this spirit personality of Godhead Himself in the Gita 15.7. Mamaivanso Jivaloki Jivabhuta Sanatana Manasasthani Riyani Prakrishtani Karishati. So the Supreme Lord Himself says that all the living entities are His eternal um, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the the journey towards self-realization first starts with inquiring about our true identity, and it should also lead to knowing which spirit soul can be regarded as knowledge. Um, so, apart from the material aspects of knowledge, as um, uh, apart from the material aspects of knowledge, which are necessary for uh, fulfilling our economic necessities, it's also important that we as human beings who fulfilling our economic necessities, it's also important that we as human beings, so it is also important that we utilize this opportunity by uh, at least endeavoring to inquire about our true identity and also our true origin. But there's no need to endeavor in Kali Yuga. The Kali Jivas have very limited lifespan, and therefore it is rather foolish to endeavor uh, too hard. But we can always know the truth from the authentic scriptures under the guidance of the Vedas. But unfortunately, our beloved Sanatani brothers and sisters, they always make it a point only to learn about spirituality from cinema, serial, and WhatsApp University. So, unless this changes, unless people get proper knowledge from the authentic scriptures, then uh, they can never get proper solutions to their problems. And it is not too difficult. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has made it so easy for us by compressing the essence of all the Upanishads in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, we can also find, like from chapter 13, verses 8 of Arjuna. So, at the beginning of chapter 13 in the Gita, Arjuna asks about six subject matters: Kshetra Shashanya, Prakriti Purusha Jnanam Nyayam. So, one of the six subject matters, uh, Jnanam is also one of the six subject matters. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead also provides, clearly explains that humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization. So this has been clearly stated by the Supreme Lord Himself. So in these verses, the Supreme Lord clearly defines what is to be regarded as knowledge. So apart from these 20 aspects, everything else is to be regarded as ignorance. So no matter how late, we can learn about how we can become better than our eternal problems of Janma Mrityu Jara. So that has also been clearly stated by the Supreme Lord in these verses, where he talks about the perception of the evil. So a person who claims to be knowledgeable should be able to realize, should be able to perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So otherwise, the person cannot be regarded as knowledgeable. So despite all the tall claims made by the so-called modern scientists who claim to have invented and discoveries, they still have no answers regarding the eternal problems of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. So no matter how much discoveries are made, people are still growing old. People are still experiencing so many diseases, and ultimately, people have to die. But the clearly said in the Bhagavad Gita, in our attempt to project ourselves as so-called intellectuals, or are we going to pay heed to what the Supreme Lord has said? It says that the one who cannot perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, he is not to be regarded as a person who is knowledgeable. Apart from that, the Supreme, there are also spiritual gurus who whose business is nothing but to mislead the people. So these so-called spiritual gurus, they mislead people by saying that, okay, if you don't want to approach a spiritual master, you can find out everything on your own. It's all within yourself. So what these bogus gurus are propagating is completely the opposite of what the Supreme Lord has mentioned in the Gita. So in the Gita, the Supreme Lord clearly mentions about Acharya Upasanam, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Apart from this, the Supreme Lord has also mentioned about the importance of a spiritual master in uh, chapter 4 itself. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshinaha. So the Bhagavad Gita was spoken from the point where Arjuna himself surrendered as a disciple to the and importance of taking shelter under a spiritual master to gain spiritual knowledge. Uh, but we all know that not just for spiritual knowledge, even to gain material knowledge, it is not as simple as buying the textbooks and studying on our own. We still have to conducted by recognized institutions, and only then the degree which was granted by that institution will be recognized for the next step. So even for material education, approaching the bona fide gurus is important. But when it then material education, so a lot of these bogus gurus, they mislead the people by saying that it's okay, even if you don't want to approach any guru, you can find out everything on your own, it's all within yourself. So they come up with all these speculations which are clearly in violation of what the Supreme Lord himself has said. So this is the result of disregarding the authentic scriptures. So the Supreme Lord has been merciful enough to uh, give us the essence of the important spiritual knowledge in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. So it is more than enough if we at least endeavor to properly study this one scripture. But the most amusing thing about our beloved Sanatani brothers and sisters is that they don't even know how many chapters and how many verses are there in the Bhagavad Gita, but they often make tall claims saying that, I want to study all the Vedas, all the Upanishads. So they they always seem to be over ambitious, but in the end they achieve nothing due to um, their tendency for making these tall claims. So, if we are really serious about liberating ourselves from these eternal problems of Janmamrityu Jara Vyadi, so it is important that we endeavor to study the Bhagavad Gita, and then for those who have completed the study of Bhagavad Gita, then they can proceed to uh, other scriptures gradually as prescribed by the spiritual masters. So even to know about what is knowledge, that itself is a huge topic, and the Supreme Lord has provided uh, the specific definition about what is knowledge in chapter 13 of the Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, as it is, especially, it is also accompanied by a beautiful purport written by Srila Prabhupada, where he has actually dedicated like almost one paragraph for each of the aspects mentioned by the Supreme Lord. So apart from Gita 13.8 to 13.12, the Supreme Lord also says in Matta Smritinjanapohanam cha Vedescha Sarvai Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. Translation: I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So, in this, knowledge itself also be known. So, any person who claims to be knowledgeable should know the Supreme Lord. Only that person is to be regarded as a jnani, as the Supreme Lord himself also mentions in the Gita, chapter 7. So, in chapter 7 of the Gita, the Supreme Lord talks about the four types of people who surrender to him. Chaturvida bhajanti mam, jana sukirtana arjuna, atto jignasu artharti, jnani cha bharatarshava. So, the Supreme Lord acknowledges that these four types of people who surrender to him are indeed Mahatmas or Sukirtis, the pious ones. But out of these four types of people, the Supreme Lord especially prefers the Jnani, who is the self realized soul who has knowledge about the self, meaning the self being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So, the one who realizes that uh, the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord is the one uh, who can really claim to be knowledgeable. But of course, those who are really knowledgeable, they won't be making claims that they are knowledgeable. Only in the case of many self-proclaimed intellectuals who often claim to be atheists or rationalists. Only they are the ones who make claims that they are very knowledgeable people by the Supreme Lord in chapter knowledge. In in Gita 15.15, he clearly says, "By all the Vedas, I am to be known." So a person who sincerely endeavors to study the Vedas, his knowledge should culminate in. Uh, so in the purport of Bhagavatam 1:12-29, it is also mentioned that of the Vedic knowledge. There are different branches of knowledge in the Vedas, of which astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. So, as mentioned earlier, the word Veda itself refers to knowledge. So, the entire epistemology of knowledge. So, uh, there are so many branches of knowledge related to the material aspects, and during those days, among the Brahmanas, the Vipras are the ones who particularly specialized in the branches of material knowledge. So, in this verse, this year, Vipra Jataka Ko Vidaha. So, during the uh, birth ceremony, Jodha, uh, in Java, in astrology, Jyotirveda is astronomy, in Jataka, in astrology. So these were Vipras, the specific group of Brahmanas whose Brahmanas were specialized in all these various branches of knowledge, and they were, and particularly the highest class among the Brahmanas, they were the ones who were the most self-realized souls who had the topmost knowledge about self-realization. So topmost among the community of Brahmanas uh, themselves. So the word Brahmana itself uh, means Brahma Jana iti Brahmana. So a Brahmana is the one who has complete knowledge about Brahman, as Arjuna himself says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Purusham Shastram Divyam Adi Devam Ajayavim. So the Supreme Lord is Parabrahman, and we, the Jiva Brahmans, are part and parcel of the Parabrahman. The Parabrahman is also the source of the Mad Brahma, meaning material nature also originated from the Parabrahman, and we are also Brahman, is part of the inferior energy, and we, the Jiva Brahmans, are part of the superior energy. However, in our present case, be regarded as superior nor inferior, caught in the middle, as the Supreme Lord Himself says in the Gita, chapter 7, that we are part of the marginal energy, like being caught in between, and therefore we are always struggling in this tug of war, as what Srila Prabhupada explains. Um, the conditioned soul is always under the influence of the uh, the three modes of material nature. So even when its direction, so this is what is described as the tug of war by Srila Prabhupada. However, uh, from the Bhagavad Gita and other authentic scriptures, we can clearly see about our present condition and why it is especially important to keep endeavoring uh, so that we can completely liberate ourselves from these material entanglements, and realize whatever knowledge that we gain should culminate in spiritual knowledge towards attaining perfection in self-realization. So self-realization itself um, is not merely about what is being propagated by the Brahmanas. So the top Brahmanas, who are the most self-realized souls, they propagate material branches of knowledge. There are different branches of knowledge in the Vedas, of which astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. So the intelligent men, generally known as the Brahmanas, took up all the different branches of Vedic knowledge to guide society. Even the Department of Military Education, Dhanurveda, was also taken up by such intelligent men, and the Vipras were also teachers of this section of knowledge, as were Dronacharya, Kripacharya, etc. The Vipras and the Brahmanas. The Vipras are those who are expert in karma kanda or fruitive activities, guiding the society towards fulfilling the material necessities of life, whereas the Brahmanas are expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence. So the Vipras uh, are those who have spiritual knowledge. Though material knowledge is important for us to live our life, but it is also important to understand that we can only liberate ourselves from this uh, condition of being conditioned souls by advancing in spiritual knowledge as well. So, no help us to solve the problems of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. And as the Supreme Lord Himself has said, one cannot claim to be knowledgeable unless he is able to perceive the evil of birth. So, unless we are able to perceive, it is also important for us to progress in spiritual knowledge as well, in to make sure that we do not end up in another. So the Vipras are those who are in karma kanda or fruit activities. This department of knowledge, um, apart from karma kanda, there are also the other departments of knowledge known as jnana kanda and upasana kanda. The culmination of upasana kanda is the devotional service of Lord Vishnu, and when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. So, whenever we talk about the Brahmanas, many self-proclaimed intellectuals who only gain knowledge from WhatsApp University, they often attribute all the problems in the world to the Brahmanas, and uh, they also indulge in uh, the propaganda uh, as instructed by their uh, foreign paymasters. But from the authentic scriptures, we can easily know that the Varna system has got nothing to do with birth, as the Supreme Lord Himself mentions in Gita 4.13. Chaturvanya Maya System Gunakarma Vivakasa Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. Chaturvanyam Maya System Guna Karma Vibhagasa. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non doer, being unchangeable. So in Gita 4.13, the Supreme Lord clearly states that the Varnas are based on gunas and karmas, guna karma vibhagasa. So from the authentic scriptures, we can clearly see that the Varna system has got nothing to do with birth, but those self-proclaimed intellectuals who claim to be rationalists and atheists, they their core business is only to target one specific religion by propagating all sorts of falsehoods because they have to fulfill the agenda of their paymasters. But for those who study the scriptures properly, they can know the truth. But the tragedy with our Sanatani community is that uh, people always make it a point only to learn about Sanatana Dharma from cinema, serial, and WhatsApp University. And uh, the funniest part is that even the self-proclaimed intellectuals, even their source of knowledge is also from WhatsApp University, but they somehow prefer to call themselves intellectuals. And in the purport to this verse from the Gita in 4.13, Srila Prabhupada also explains about how the gunas are related to the varnas. So first, the intelligent class of men, technically called brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The the mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Shudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. So it is clearly explained in this verse that the the varnas uh, can be clearly mapped according to the gunas of every individual, and it has got nothing to do with birth. Apart from the explanation in this verse, in verse 4.13, there's also a further explanation in chapter 18 of the Gita, starting from verse 40 onwards. In 18.40, the Supreme Lord says, there is no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems which is freed from these three modes born of material nature. So this simply means that the three levels of the 14 planetary systems, the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems, covering the 14 planets, are all part of this material universe. And therefore, as long as there are living entities living in this material universe, they can never be free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Then in 18.41, the Supreme Lord says, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. Referring to Arjuna, the Supreme Lord says that all the four varnas are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes. Again, this is a further reinforcement of what was mentioned in Gita 4.13. Then in 18.42, the Supreme Lord explains about the qualities of uh, the varna of the Brahmanas: peacefulness, self control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, business. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So, in this verse, in 18.42, the Supreme Lord clearly explains what are the qualities of someone who can be regarded as a Brahmana. Again, the Supreme Lord did not say that someone who is born in a Brahmana family automatically becomes a Brahmana. The Brahmanas are situated in the mode of goodness, and they should also have these qualities of peacefulness, self control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. So we can only know about what is there in the authentic scriptures by studying the authentic scriptures, like Bhagavad Gita as it is. So we can never attain true knowledge from WhatsApp University. And there are also a further explanation about the other varnas in verses 43 and 44. But it is to be understood that all the four varnas are still related to the material modes of nature. Though the brahmanas are regarded as the topmost uh, in the four varnas, it is to be understood that even the mode of goodness is not good enough. The mode of goodness is also still a material mode of nature. So even for brahmanas, it is not that uh, they should there's no need for them to endeavor to attain perfection in their spiritual journey. So as mentioned in the purport, in the Bhagavatam purport, the culmination of Upasana Kanda is the devotional service of Lord Vishnu, and when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. So even in the Bhagavatam, in many chapters, where we can see the conversations between the various personalities, like the conversation between Vyasdeva and Narada Muni, and also in the conversation between Lord Brahma and Narada Muni. So we can see uh, we can see one one person addressing the other as Brahmana, like in the conversation between Lord Brahma and Narada Muni in the second canto, where Lord Brahma explains about the process of creation. So, in that part, Lord Brahma himself admits that he is only the secondary creator. So, during that conversation, Lord Brahma would be addressing Narada Muni as Brahmana. Uh, in many, there are many such occurrences in that dialogue between them. So, Narada Muni is one of the top, but still he he is being referred to as a Brahmana in many parts of the Bhagavatam. So this simply means that the the Varna of uh, Brahmana is still inferior to the topmost level of being a Vaishnava. So Narada Muni, being one of the topmost Vaishnava, is automatically a Brahmana. So only one who has surpassed even the quality of being a Brahmana can become a Vaishnava. So since Narada Muni is one of the topmost Vaishnava, so automatically he also qualifies to be addressed as a Brahmana. So it is important even for elevated Brahmanas to further endeavor and further elevate themselves to the status of Vaishnavas to completely liberate themselves from the material designation. Even the uh, even the tag of a Brahmana is still a material designation, and therefore the Varna system is also a material designation to uh, to enable individuals to discharge their duties in the proper way according to their uh, qualities and abilities. However, the Varna identity is still a material designation, and we can only liberate ourselves from the material entanglement if we endeavor towards getting rid of all these material designations. So even for the Brahmanas who are situated in the mode of goodness, the mode of goodness, though it is regarded as purer than the other two modes of passion and ignorance, still it is regarded as a material mode of nature. So this explanation is there in chapter 14 of the Gita, that one chapter which is dedicated to complete explanation about the three modes of material nature. However, uh, though chapter 14 is dedicated to elaborate explanation about that topic alone, about the topic of the three modes of material nature, but we can actually see that uh, there are references to this topic uh, of the three modes of material nature in almost all the chapters throughout the Gita. So it actually starts from as early as chapter 2 itself. Even in chapter 2, there are references to these three modes of material nature, and it continues even after chapter 14 uh, towards the end of chapter 18. So understanding this topic about the three modes of material nature is a very important prerequisite for us to understand what the Varna system is all about. But those self proclaimed intellectuals who only gain knowledge from WhatsApp University, so they are the ones who spread falsehoods to defame the Varna system, and also spread other uh, propaganda to project the Brahmana community as the cause of all the problems in the world. But to those who properly study the authentic scriptures, they will be able to distinguish between the truth and falsehoods. But in the case of the self proclaimed intellectuals, for them, they are desperate to fulfill the agenda of their paymasters. So we can't really blame them. But it is their deliberate attempt. So only if our Sanatani brothers and sisters are sincere enough to uh, study the authentic scriptures, only then they they can avoid from falling prey to these uh, propaganda of uh, the so-called intellectuals. So even to understand about who is a Brahmana, even that itself is a very elaborate topic. But we can only find out the truth by studying authentic scriptures. Elevated Brahmanas are Vaishnavas engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and thus Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the science of devotional service, is very dear to the Vaishnavas. And as explained in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is the mature fruit of Vedic knowledge, Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam, and is superior subject matter above the three khandas, Karma, Jnana, Upasana. So, regarding these karma kanda activities or fruitive activities, the Supreme Lord has also mentioned in chapter 9 of the Gita. So, in chapter 9, especially in verses 20 and 21, the Supreme Lord explains in 9.20, the Supreme Lord says, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly, purified of sinful reactions. They take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So those who are engaged in the karma kanda activities, they do get the opportunity to be born in the heavenly planet. But from the Bhagavatam, we can clearly understand that even the heavenly planets, the Divya Swargas, are still part of the 14 planetary systems, which is still part of this material universe, which is not immune from the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. Then in 9.21, the Supreme Lord says, when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So, this is why the Vedas, especially the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, is regarded as inferior to the mature fruit of Vedic knowledge, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who merely study the Karma Kanda portions will only be able further um, to further um, increase their desire for sense gratification. So that is why they are engaged in the karma kanda fruitive activities. They want to enjoy heavenly pleasures, and though they might think that they are being engaged in the study of the Vedas, but they do not understand what the Supreme Lord had said about the purpose of the Vedas. In Gita 15.15, the Supreme Lord clearly says, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. So, the purpose of studying the Vedas should be to know the origin of all knowledge, and that is the Supreme Lord. But uh, those who are engaged in the Karmakanda activities, they only study the Karmakanda portions, and they conduct those fruitive activities to attain the heavenly planets for further sense gratification without realizing that even after attaining those planets, they will still be part of this material universe. So merely going from this middle planet to the upper planetary system is not to be regarded as a very intelligent act, because as the Supreme Lord uh, clearly says, the one who is truly knowledgeable uh, will be able to perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So from the Gita and Bhagavatam, even in the Gita chapter 8 itself, the Supreme Lord clearly explains about how even the abode of Lord Brahma is not immune from the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. Even the topmost planet in the 14 planetary systems, Satyaloka, which is the abode of Lord Brahma, even that planet is not safe from destruction, because it is still part of this temporary material universe. And therefore, for those who do not clearly understand the uh, the purpose behind the Vedas, they will only endeavor to further increase their sense gratification by studying the Karmakanda portions of uh, the Vedas, and therefore it is uh, it is said that these portions, the Karmakanda portions, are actually inferior to the mature fruit of Vedic knowledge, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. Only Srimad Bhagavatam enables us to understand the science of devotional service, thus enabling us to completely liberate ourselves from this material entanglement. Amongst the Karmakanda experts, the Jataka expert Vipras were good astrologers who could tell all the future history of a born child simply by the astral calculations of the time Lagna. Such expert Jataka Vipras were present during the birth of Maharaja Parikshit, and his grandfather Maharaja Yudhishthira awarded the Vipras sufficiently with gold, land, villages, grains, and other valuable necessities of life, which also include cows. There is a need of such Vipras in the social structure, and it is the duty of the state to maintain them comfortably, as designed service to the people in general. About the expertise of the Jataka Vipras. So the Brahmanas who attended the birth ceremony of Maharaja Parikshit, they were the Jataka Vipras who were expert astrologers, which is also another branch of Vedic knowledge. And they made so accurate predictions about the life of Maharaja Parikshit himself, even to the point where they were able to predict even the last episode in his life, uh, when he would get cursed by the son of Brahmana, even to the point of predicting that he would die due to a snake bite in 7 days. And they were also able to predict that Maharaja Parikshit would spend the last 7 days of his life by hearing Krishna Katha from Sukadeva Goswami. So during Dwapara Yuga, there was such expert Vipras who were great astrologers, and they were rewarded by Maharaja Yudhishthira, who was the ruler of Hastinapura. So the ruler was uh, was fulfilling his duty to reward these brahmanas who were engaged in the business of propagating knowledge about spirituality. So, since the brahmana is the one who knows about Brahman, uh, by propagating this knowledge, whether it covered the material aspects or the spiritual aspects, they were doing a great service to the society in general, and therefore the rulers always rewarded them with the valuable necessities of life. And compared to the Vipras, since self-realized souls, so they were even greater experts in the topic of spirituality. So they were never uh, they were never enamored by these material opulences uh, provided by the rulers. Rather, they would often make sure that even those valuables uh, were being put to uh, propagating spiritual knowledge to the society. So this was the norm Kali. So in the beginning of this purport, the Vedas are the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. So during the time when the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse of knowledge, uh, Bharat was the most prosperous country in the world. So that was the time when the Vedas were regarded as the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. But after this so-called modern science and advancement of the so-called technology, so we are also able to see the current condition of Bharat, mainly because uh, due to the degradation uh, that we are witnessing in Kali Yuga. So, whatever it is, the main point to be noted here is that Veda refers to knowledge which not just which is not just focused on the material aspects but also on the spiritual aspects of life, and therefore the Vedas were known to cover the entire epistemology of knowledge. So traditionally, those who were trained in Vedic knowledge, they also understood that whatever material knowledge that they are accumulating should ultimately culminate in spiritual knowledge, and therefore self-realization was regarded as a very important objective in their quest for knowledge. So that has also been mentioned by the Supreme Lord in verses 13.8 to 13.12 in the Gita. So in those verses, the Supreme Lord also says that accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth are also important aspects of knowledge. So one can only claim to be knowledgeable if he understands the importance of self-realization, because it is not enough if we merely realize that uh, if we realize the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, we should also understand the importance of self-realization about knowing our true identity. Only then that would further strengthen our resolve to liberate ourselves from this material entanglement. And it is also important to uh, to understand the absolute truth so that we are clear about our ultimate destination. So uh, there are three levels of realization of the absolute truth, and only the Bhagavan level of realization, which is the topmost level, only that would lead us to the ideal destination. Otherwise, for those who merely regard the first partial feature as the uh, as the ultimate destination, for them it is regarded as spiritual suicide. And the reason has also been clearly explained by Srila Prabhupada about why it is completely unwise to aim for merging into the Brahmajyoti. So, the intricacies of all these topics can only be understood by studying the authentic scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And uh, Srila Prabhupada has been merciful enough um, to provide us with the Bhaktivedanta purports, which enable us to understand these intricacies. Very often, we also hear from people who may buy the Bhagavad Gita, but they often say that they do not understand anything. The main reason is because we should not uh, read the Bhagavad Gita like reading newspapers. We should study, and that's why the Bhaktivedanta purports are there to help us in the study of the Bhagavad Gita. So rather than making thought about uh, aiming to complete the study of all the Vedas, it is enough if we sincerely endeavor towards completing the study of the Bhagavad Gita at least within our limited lifespan, so that we can at least understand what the Supreme Lord uh, specifically wanted to say to us, the Kali Jivas. So, in this verse 29 of chapter 12, first canto, uh, it is mainly about the Vipras and how they are slightly different from the Brahmanas. So, though they can also be regarded as belonging to the Brahmana community, but the Vipras are those who have specialized in the material branches of knowledge. So, even for these Vipras, uh, though they may have specialized in their respective field of knowledge, even for them it is important to further endeavor towards elevating themselves to the uh, to the level of Vaishnavas, so that they can completely liberate themselves from the material designations related to the Varna system. So that's all for this verse 112:29. Thank you. Hare Krishna.